All right, let's jump right into a really big but kind of overlooked public health puzzle. Non-communicable diseases, or NCDs. Things like heart disease and diabetes. We're going to break down why it's so unbelievably hard to get the message across about the risks and, more importantly, what the experts are trying to do about it.
So let me start with a question for you. Think about it. When a new virus pops up, what happens? Total panic, right? We see wall-to-wall news coverage, public fear, government scrambling to take action. But then you've got things like heart disease or diabetes, which, let's be honest, quietly kill way more people every single year. So what's the deal? Why the huge difference in how we all react? That's the big paradox we're going to unpack today.
Okay, first up, let's get a handle on the nature of this problem. See, NCDs aren't like some sudden outbreak. They're more like a slow-moving, silent epidemic. And this really gets to the heart of it. You've got infectious diseases over here, causing public hysteria. But NCDs? Nah, they just don't set off the same alarms. And sure, studies show that a lot of us are worried about getting something like cancer, but that personal worry, it almost never boils over into that big, widespread public fear that forces real collective action. It's just this slow burn that we've all kind of learned to live with. And what makes all of this even trickier is this really common blame the victim mindset. You know the one I'm talking about. It's so easy to just think, well, people with these diseases are just making bad choices. They smoke, they eat junk, they don't exercise. But honestly, that view is way too simple. It completely ignores this whole complex web of things, like behaviors we learn, how much money we have, and the world around us that actually shape our health.
And check this out, because this is where it gets really interesting. This is data on health literacy from a survey in Malaysia. A whopping 35% of the population has limited health literacy. Let that sink in. That means more than a third of people have a hard time just finding, understanding, and then using basic health info to make good decisions for themselves. So, you see, it's not just about willpower. A lot of the time, there's a fundamental barrier to even understanding the information in the first place.
Which brings us to a really important point about how we can even begin to tackle this. It's got to be about way more than just throwing a bunch of facts at people and hoping something sticks. Yeah, this is the key takeaway right here. Effective risk communication is not just educating the public. It's not a one-way street where an expert just lectures a passive audience. That old model? It just flat out doesn't work when you're talking about something as complicated as changing habits people have had their whole lives.
The real deal is way more dynamic. True risk communication is an open, two-way exchange. It's a conversation. The goal is to build a shared understanding of the risk, between the experts and the actual people who are facing it. It's all about empowerment, giving people the tools they need to make their own informed decisions and take steps to protect themselves. And this lays it out perfectly. Look, it's a process, right? It starts with getting information and actually engaging with it. That leads you to make an informed decision. And then, and this is the most important part, that decision leads to real action that lowers your risk. It's a clear path from just knowing something to actually doing something to protect yourself.
So the big question is, how do health communicators actually get people to walk down that path? Well, let's open up the toolkit and look at the strategies they use.
At the end of the day, it all boils down to two things. First, you have to promote the perception of risk. Make it feel real, make it feel personal. And then you have to motivate people to actually change their behavior. And you absolutely need both. They go hand in hand, because if the risk doesn't feel real to you, why would you ever be motivated to act?
Okay, I really like this because it breaks down all the different angles you can come from. First, you've got the straight-up factual approach. Cigarette smoke is toxic. Simple. Then you can try to elicit fear. Smoking kills. Pretty direct, right? Or you can encourage action by giving people a tool, something practical, like a phone number for a quit line. And finally, you can highlight the benefit. Focus on the positive. With a healthy heart, the beat goes on. The best campaigns, they usually mix and match all four of these. So a really key strategy is something called audience mapping. It's pretty simple, really. It's all about asking, who are we talking to and what message do they actually need to hear? I mean, it makes sense, right? You're not going to say the same thing to a young, healthy person with some bad habits that you would to someone who's already been diagnosed with the disease. You have to tailor the message so it fits their specific situation and what they care about.
And that idea of tailoring the message leads right into this next strategy, making the risk personal. Look, general warnings like smoking is bad for you are super easy for us to ignore. But imagine this.
You sit down with a 60-year-old man who has diabetes and high blood pressure, and you tell him, based on his personal data, his exact percentage chance of having a heart attack in the next decade. Whoa. That kind of personalized info makes the threat feel real, immediate, and a whole lot harder to just brush off.
Okay, so we have all these smart strategies, but even with this great toolkit, communicating about NCDs is still incredibly difficult. So why? What makes it so tough?
Well, for starters, there are some built-in problems. NCDs are super complex. They have all these tangled-up risk factors. Plus, the timeline is just huge. The stuff you do today might not have consequences for decades. And here's the real kicker. A lot of these unhealthy behaviors don't have any symptoms. You can feel totally fine, absolutely normal, while your blood pressure is through the roof. It makes the risk feel so abstract, so far away.
And it's not just about the diseases themselves. Health communicators are up against some other major hurdles. For one, they're trying to reach people who are completely tuned out when it comes to health topics. Then there's often a lack of political will to make the big, sweeping changes that are needed. And on top of all that, they have to deal with today's crazy media world, especially this thing called citizen journalism.
So what is citizen journalism? It's basically the idea that on social media, anyone can be a reporter, anyone can be a health guru. And what that means is that real, official health advice now has to fight for attention in a world that is just flooded with personal opinions, random anecdotes, and, let's be real, a lot of straight-up misinformation.
Okay, so things are complex, things are challenging. Given all that, what's the path forward? How do we actually start to do better?
Well, the general consensus seems to be pointing towards two big ideas. First, using a social marketing approach to help change behavior, and second, building really powerful partnerships across different sectors.
Now, social marketing isn't what it sounds like. We're not selling soap here. We're trying to sell better health habits. And the whole strategy is built on these 4 principles. It needs to be predictive. You anticipate what challenges someone might face. It's got to be personalized, tailoring the message to their actual life. It needs to be proactive, reaching people before they have a health crisis. And finally, it has to be participatory, making people an active partner in their own health journey, not just a passive recipient of advice.
And this is so critical. Governments can't do this alone. It's just not possible. Real, lasting change requires partnerships with companies, with community organizations, with advocacy groups. It's all about collaboration to target action right at the local level to make the healthy choice the easy choice for everyone.
And I want to end with this really powerful quote from Maisha Hutton. She says, maybe the biggest challenge is that we've all become, well, kind of numb to NCDs, simply because they're so common. They're everywhere. And that suggests the path forward might not just be about better data or clearer facts. Maybe it's about finding champions who can share the real human stories behind all the statistics to remind all of us what's really, truly at stake.